But other than that, I'm just going to go and prioritize the questions about the mindset of a young person looking to get married and what's Islam say about that and all that good stuff, inshallah. Or the idea, the rights and duties and obligations of marriage and that sort of thing. So let's get started. Somebody wrote, I am a woman and I want to put myself out there in a religious way without joining Muslim dating apps or matrimonial services in a halal manner. All right, very good. So first off, I commend you for having the correct intention. May Allah Ta'ala reward you. We live in an era where the halal has become extremely difficult and the haram there's a new avenue for haram every single day. And Muslims are falling further and further into the lizard hole, as the expression goes. And that expression comes from the Prophet Muhammad ﷺ, who said, لا تتبعن سنن الذين من قبلكم حتى إذا دخلوا جحر ضب لدخلتموه أو كما قال صلى الله عليه وسلم. He said that you will follow people in my ummah. He was predicting for the future. He said, unfortunately, some in my ummah or many in my ummah will follow the footsteps of the nations that came before you, to the point where if they were to enter the hole of a lizard, the little den of a lizard, then you would just follow them right into that too. And the reason he gave that expression is because the Arabs understood in the desert, a lizard, we're not talking about those tiny lizards, those geckos you see on the wall. A desert lizard is really big and it can chomp off your finger, right? So the way that it has its home in the desert, it burrows in the sand. But there's only one entrance and exit for the lizard's hole. So if you put your hand into that, the Arabs in the desert knew you never put your hand into a hole, even to investigate, because that lizard, if it's in there, it has no way out. So you're immediately a threat and it has nowhere to go but to attack you. You put your hand in there, it comes out missing some fingers, right? So he's saying even you will follow, unfortunately, people of my ummah will follow the footsteps of the people before them, the nations who got destroyed before us or ruined themselves before us, to the point where even if they were to go into a lizard's hole, despite the danger, despite every one of us knowing what that means, you'd still do that and cause your own destruction, cause yourself to lose a bunch of fingers. And the Sahaba said, O Messenger of Allah, which nations are you referring to? Are you referring to the Jews and the Christians? He said, who else? Who else? Yes. So the same mistakes, the Jews and the Christians received divine guidance from God. They received divine scripture. And over hundreds and hundreds of years, they made a tweak over here. They changed this. They neglected that. They said, oh, what's the big deal of this? Reinterpret this. Ignore that. And slowly but surely left their deen behind, to the point where they have the book with them, whatever remains of the book, and they ignore it. Hijab exists in their books. They ignore it. They find some interpretation. Every depiction of Mother Mary, Maryam alayhi salam, is in a hijab, like a Muslim woman, mashallah. But the people who put her up on their walls will have 500 reasons why they don't have to follow that. Jesus alayhi salam, in all of their depictions, despite them making him a white guy with blue eyes, he's still wearing a thobe and with a big beard, looks like a Muslim man. If they were to see him today, as they depict him, they'll be like, this guy's Muslim, for sure. It doesn't look like a modern Christian, yes or no? And yet, when they see a Muslim who looks like Jesus, they hate him and they turn him away. So like even just the imagery, they reject it. Imagine when Isa alayhi salam returns. These are the people saying, we can't wait for him to come back. The people who look like him today, you're disgusted to look at them. So it's very curious, very curious. Anyway, the Prophet ﷺ said, beware, my ummah will make these mistakes, so we should also beware, right, in that case. So unfortunately, we have fallen into the lizard's hole. We have slowly but surely X'd out all the avenues that made marriage accessible. And I'm not talking about just 1,000 years ago. I'm talking about literally 50 to 100 years ago. You speak to your grandparents, and even your parents to some extent, marriage was a lot more accessible. Yes, there was flaws. Yes, there were problems in the system, as always. Everything has pros and cons, but it was just accessible. There's a reason why, and some questions came on this regard, my family is pushing me to marry, within the cousins and this and that. To us, it becomes very you're thrown off, it's weird, and so on. You have to understand, 1 generation ago, 2 generations ago, that's just how things were done, because your cousins, your tribe was big. It wasn't just your first cousin. You go back, again, 1 or 2 generations, you got your 1,000 people, your 2,000 people, and that's it. That's who else you're going to marry from besides the 2,000 who are you can check their background, you can relate to. Your family has known their family your whole life to be able to get a background check and to just be reassured. If there's any dispute, we'll handle it together properly. So there's a rhyme and reason for everything that has happened. Every culture, for the most part, that you're weirded out by today, at some point it was the logical option. Slowly but surely, things change. We traveled, our parents came thousands of miles away across the Atlantic Ocean. The world has changed. We no longer have our tribes around us. And the cousin marriage thing is now very, very foreign because it doesn't make as much sense. It no longer serves the functional purpose it used to. So culture takes time to catch up. Does that make sense? Just so we're clear here, I want to make this loud and clear. I do not support cousin marriages. I don't recommend it. I think it's a bad idea in general. I believe that the fiqh that I follow also does not recommend it. It's not a good idea. It can lead to, over time, to genetic problems in the family and in the household. And it's not, again, I understand why some cultures still do it and why they've done it historically. But in our era, with the circumstances that we're in, I don't recommend it. If a couple is happy to do it and their family is encouraging it, and they do some, this might be controversial, but in the event that a couple is coming from, a potential couple is coming from like their parents were cousins, then it's a very, very, very risky for another generation of cousins to get married from genetic potential problems for the kids and so on and so forth. So I would certainly put a red flag there until they get that figured out. They go do genetic testing, whatever they got to do. Anyway, I'm getting into a side note here. Let's get back here. Someone says, she's saying, I want to put myself out there in a religious way. I want to follow the rules and so on. So I just wanted to give you the preamble to let you know that yes, unfortunately, we live in an era where they've made the halal very, very difficult. It wasn't always like this. And I'm not talking about a million years ago, I'm talking about recently. So because people say, well, why would Allah make it so hard? Why do we have, we have a barrier between the men and the women. So like, does that mean like, khalas, you just get older, your years waste away and you can't get married and Islam makes it so difficult and everyone else is having an easier time? Well, we are living in an era of fitna where holding on to your deen is like holding on to a hot coal. And shaitan's avenues are flourishing and the avenues of the righteous are being closed off by people sometimes who are intentional, sometimes they don't know better, right? It's our job to be patient, to continue to pursue a halal way, to pursue all your halal options, which I'll mention now, because very often we don't. Because some of them are awkward, they're embarrassing, you got to put yourself out there. But, something's got to give at some point, right? Which I think we've reached that level. And I promise you guys, I'm going to do my best to be of service in that regard. If anybody's going to knock on, take those awkward options, then it should be the people who are in charge and, spare you guys that to initiate. So, for example, what are the Islamic avenues to get married? Number one is family, very obvious one. The mother and the father, it is their job. And particularly the father, if it's talking about daughters, but if it's talking about sons, it becomes your job. Just so we're clear, because the man is the wali of his own self. But Islamically speaking, this might be brand new to some of you guys. Islamically speaking, it is the father's job to get his daughters married. Now, obviously, he's relying on the mother. She knows the women of the community. She knows the daughters of the community. But it is his job. He is sinning if he neglects and lets her get older and older without getting her married. So all the men over here, you're going to be fathers one day, inshallah. Allah might bless you with wonderful daughters. May Allah bless you. It is from the day your daughter is born. In fact, before she is born, it is your job to start planning for her future. And your sons too, obviously. But a son is a man of his own. He might, go off and be somewhere else in a million miles away. You're planning for both, but it's your obligation in the eyes of Allah for your daughters. Meaning, what do I mean before your daughter is born? The community that you start building roots in. You set your roots down in. The masjid that you live near, where you take your kids to school, the caliber of the men in your community or the kids that are growing, the sons of your community members and your children, the children of your community members, you're keeping an eye on them, and this is for the moms too as well, like for your daughters, for your sons. You're like, okay, this, obviously you have no idea when they're 1-year-old and 2-year-old how everybody's gonna turn out, but it's your obligation to surround yourself with good people and continue to have a community. So who else are you gonna marry from, right? It's your obligation. Don't be a guy who goes and chases a job, middle of nowhere, there's no Muslim community for hours, hey, pays a lot, you raise your kids there, all their friends are non-Muslim, no community, your kids are 18 years old finally, and then you panic. Where are we gonna get married? What are we gonna do? That's a huge mistake you made if you do that, right? And you misprioritized and you are sinning. A person who lets his daughter get to 22, 23, 24, 25, and he has not taken any attempts, that's a sin. That's a sin. It's his job. What's he sitting around for, right? I know it's hard to swallow for a lot of people, right? May Allah Ta'ala bless our community. May Allah bless you all. By the way, guys, it is all rizq. Nobody should ever feel, oh my God, my time is running out. And I know we're all human. We can only ever feel that way, right? But don't get into the cycle of feeling sorry for yourself. Everything is rizq. Everything comes when Allah wills. You make dua, raise your hands to the sky. And Allah, the same way that He granted Khadija radiallahu anha, the best of mankind, sallallahu alaihi wasallam, the same way that He granted Salama, the best of mankind after her husband passed away, sallallahu alaihi wasallam, Muhammad. He will grant you, the righteous man, he will grant you the righteous woman, if you are worthy, and if you pray to him, and you dedicate yourself to him, and you open up the avenues, you attempt the avenues that Allah allows. So family, it's a family's job. They should reach out to a community, extended family, and present options to their child, and say, hey, listen, what do you consider this person? Let's attempt this avenue. Let's attempt to talk to this person, and so on and so forth, right? If the family neglect that, or if your family is not particularly religious or practicing, or so the people that they are picking don't fit the Islamic criteria. This happens a lot. Mom and dad do have options for you, but none of them are religious. So you're like, no, I reject it for valid reasons, which is good. You're holding on to your principles. So the next stage will be your community. That's where I should come in. That's where our staff and our elders and our mentors should come in. We are in the process of, and you guys may have noticed it, we're in the process of ramping up our involvement in this. Now, this is always like a very sensitive area. Masjids don't like to get involved any more than, generically, because, it starts to become a whole thing, and, there's a lot of pitfalls, potential ways for it to go wrong. But I believe that we've reached a point where I should, and the community and the staff and the elders should double down on this. So you'll be seeing a lot more attempts from us. But here's what you got to understand. As we make more attempts, it's going to come with mistakes, because we got to try new things and they might fail. So for example, we might partner with a matrimonial service that ends up being too liberal and they do some haram things. And obviously we're going to do our vetting, do our homework, try our best. But sometimes things slip through the cracks. Sometimes an organization you interacted with, later on they change and they go the terrible direction. So we're going to pick up the pieces after that. We're doing our best to protect your privacy, to protect your sensitivity, to keep things halal as 100% above ground. But in taking risks, in attempting new avenues, some of them don't pan out. So this is a work in progress. And so, for example, one thing that we very recently did was this app/organization called In Pairs. Many of you have heard about it. They're very aggressive with their marketing. So In Pairs is an app. It's a matrimonial Muslim app. We sat with their CEO or boss, whatever they call it, and we talked, and we said, so what makes you different than these other apps that are basically just become dating apps? And he explained it, and he showed us how it works and so on, and there's a lot of respect to privacy, and they don't just let you just see everybody. They match you through their algorithms and through moderators. That's why they charge a monthly fee to pay their moderators. So it looks better than what's out there, and it has some level of moderation and some level of keeping the dignity level high. So we said, Bismillah, we're trying with them. So we partnered with them, or like we enlisted their help for young men and women to sign up. You put some of your information, you answer a bunch of questions about what you're looking for, and their algorithm helps you find, and including their manual moderators, they help you find a match. I think it's once a month or something like that, from your community. And if you check out of your box, like outside my community also, they do that as well. So it's something that I encourage you guys to look into, because it's just another avenue that is available to you. And you guys give us the feedback. If it doesn't align with our values, or if something's off with it, then we will disconnect. But I hope that doesn't get there, inshallah ta'ala. Another thing that we will be doing in our community soon, you will probably see it this summer, inshallah, is Suhbah Institute. They do matrimonial events and programs. They did one at ICSI a couple of months ago, and I'm good friends with the founder. And inshallah, we should be doing one in the masjid. It's a matrimonial event. We've done others. They did one. Suhbah did one last year in Mass, Brooklyn. So those are things that can be done as well. So another aspect of community. How do you put yourself out there if you're a man or a woman? Be part of the community. How can people know you exist? There's a phrase that some sheikhs mentioned, that the conservatives of today, the Muslim conservatives, are more conservative than the Sahaba in some ways. And the Muslim liberals are more liberal than the Sahaba. That one we all agree on. Like everybody, it's so obvious. Muslim liberals are too liberal. The Muslim conservatives are too conservative. At the time of the Prophet ﷺ, they did not have a barrier in the masjid. It's really that simple. Like you can argue back and forth why we need it. Sure, obviously we have one now, right? They did not have one at the time of the Prophet ﷺ. The men and women at the time of the Sahaba, several narrations, they knew each other by first name basis. And maybe they would speak in passing, right? Obviously they kept their dignity, they kept their modesty and so on, but there was no like, oh my God, I can't believe they know each other's names. I can't believe he recognizes her when he sees her walking. Like, how can he do that? There should be a barrier. He should not know who that person is. That wasn't how it is. That's not how a community survives, right? They know each other. They know this person. And so when a community gets together and they know each other over time, and you're part of the community and you're involved, slowly but surely, people get to know who you are. They ask about you, or they learn about your family, or they learn about who you are. And slowly but surely, you may be interested in this person. You ask me, hey, so-and-so, can you find out from her family if she's looking to get married and so on. So you get the process started. right? So be part of the community, volunteer, participate, attend lectures. Obviously all this has to be for the sake of Allah, otherwise you're in very dangerous territory. But it is a Muslim's obligation to be part of their community, right? So you're doing it for the sake of Allah, and as a secondary side note, you'll be more visible and people will take notice, inshallah, and then you can take notice of others, someone that you might be interested in marriage. Next, another way is that you reach out to the imam or to mentors. Obviously the females, for the female mentors, the brothers, you can reach out to me, you reach out to other mentors in the community and let them know I'm looking to get married. The other avenues are not finding me what I'm looking for, my family and so on. So I wanted to rely on the community and the imam and so on and so forth. If you're not in an usra is an Arabic term that means family. Mass has a system, it's a setup where they try to gather every group of young men or women to a leader, somebody who's their mentor, who will follow up on them and check up on them. So, five people who are in their teens, somebody who's 25 will be in charge of them. They meet once a week. They just check up on them, make sure they're, hey, how's your prayers going? How's school going along? And that person should be like the middleman or middlewoman as they learn more about their younger brothers or younger sisters in that regard. They come talk to me, hey, I got some good people in my usra. Like that sort of setup helps. That's another avenue. And finally, another avenue, two more. Apps, matrimonial events, etc. All these things are perfectly fine if they are halal. They're just another tool. There's nothing shameful or awkward. It's another tool. Another tool to meet people. If it is halal, you're fine. If it breaches halal, rules and guidelines about modesty and interaction, then of course it's haram because of that, not because it's an app to meet other people. And then the final avenue would be school, work, any other type of interaction. Technically, Khadija radiallahu anha met the Prophet ﷺ through work, right? Technically. However, the way she approached it meant everything. She sent a servant, she was wealthy, she sent a servant who was familiar to the Prophet ﷺ to basically inform him or let him know that she's interested or that she's available for marriage. And this is her indirect way to let him know, because the man is the one typically who requests or asks for proposes basically. So she let the servant let the Prophet ﷺ know, and the Prophet ﷺ was also interested. So he approached her family formally, her wali formally, and then they got married. So she saw a great person. She saw an opportunity that was just the best person of mankind, and she wasn't going to let it pass her by, right? Radiallahu anha wa sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. So that's another opportunity. School and work, it's not haram. If somebody, you're interested in somebody from interacting with them in the MSA or this or that, you just got to approach it in a halal manner. That's where things fall apart. That's where shaitan plays the game. When a young man and a young woman are alone, shaitan is their third, right? And things fall apart. So if you do it halal way, there's no shame in meeting in any of the above ways. And then continue to make dua, and I pray that Allah allows me to be a way for this door to open more for all of you guys. Somebody said, I want to propose to a person in the community, but I have the fear of rejection and the fear of awkwardness because it's a person that I see often. How can I overcome this? All right. It's a fair question. It's very honest, mashallah. So may Allah bless you. So I don't know the gender of the person asking this. So let me just answer generally, then I'll go to more specific for the genders. The general answer is that, okay, there's somebody in the community you are interested in, you want to, just so we're clear here, as Muslims, when we say propose, it's not like the Western nonsense, you get on one knee and all that garbage, right? What you're saying is, hey, I don't know much about this person. I would like to initiate the, the courtship process to get to know them, to see if we should get engaged and pursue a relationship. So the proposal in Islamic concept is very much more, it's a way earlier step than with the Western. In the Western, they do every single thing under the sun and have 3 kids. Then he proposes. And then they cry at the wedding. What are you crying about? Like, you guys are married, you've been married for 10 years, what are you crying about? Then only thing left is to get divorced, which they do. So I never understood, never ever. They already moved in together and they're crying at the wedding. What are you crying about? And you can't see her like, can't see her in the dress. You see her every day. What the heck is that? It's so stupid. But anyway, in Islam, the proposal is the initiation. Or at least, you use whatever term you want to use. But just so we're clear, because people say, oh, it's so weird. How do you propose to somebody you don't even know? You're not proposing getting on one knee. And what you're saying, someone caught your eye, someone's interactions are attracted you, right? Or made you feel like, wow, this person seems to be of good character. I only know one thing or two things or 10 things, depending on how long you've known them. Now I'd like to take the next step, but I want to do it with respect and dignity. I'd like to enter the home from the front door, as Allah says, وَادْخُلُوا الْبُيُوتَ مِنْ أَبْوَابِهَا. I'd like to be above ground, so I'm taking the next step to get to know them with the permission of their family, right? So that's what that means. Okay, just so we're clear. So my general advice, if somebody catches your eye in the community and you'd like to see if they're available, if they're looking, if their age is similar to yours, and all those things, do not approach the person directly. Do what Khadija radiallahu anha did, approach a middle person who knows them. Now, obviously in the community, it's much simpler. You approach the imam, you approach the elder sister or mentor or staff member or so on, and you tell them, hey, listen, so-and-so, can you help me figure out if they are available, if they're looking to get married? If then you take the next steps, like that middle person, if they're a mentor or myself or any of the others, then our job would be find out if they're available or interested, and maybe like the next step would be like let them know specifically, are you interested in so and so, right? Would you consider going pursuing the next step with this person? Now, the questioner says, I fear rejection. That's one of my concerns. Like if they reject me, I see them already in the community. First of all, I'm going to feel embarrassed and sad and whatnot, but then I have to see them later, right? So that's a bigger problem. So that's one of the reasons why you do use a middle person, is that softens the rejection, because it's at the end of the day, listen, it's part of the risk that you take by putting yourself out there. But when there's a middle person, the way they'll present it in the way that hopefully they're wise, because they're older and they're already married. By the way, the middle person should always be already married, because they're out of the game basically. So also there's a wisdom that happens with that. Also, they can speak to their spouse who might know that family and so on, right? So or that person. So the first value of going through a middle person, an older one, is that you keep it above ground, you keep it halal. Number two is that you create a buffer zone. And it softens the interaction. If it's a rejection or the person declined, you don't really know why they declined. Maybe they're already engaged and they're just keeping it private. Maybe they need 2 more years to finish college. Maybe there's so much now middle ground that you don't really feel rejected. You feel like, oh, khair, inshallah. Maybe they're racist, right? It doesn't matter at that point. So it really softens the rejection. I don't even want to call it that. It also softens the awkwardness. You avoid the awkwardness phase, right? So that's why I recommend going through and then that way when you end up, this person saying, I end up seeing them later if it didn't work out, you don't even know to what extent they know, because don't forget, the middle person can go to them and say, hey, I think so-and-so might be good for you. What do you think? So the person, and they go like, no, you know what, I don't like him. I'm racist. I don't like that person. So that person doesn't even know that you asked, you requested. They might think that the middle person was just suggesting them. Understood? Is that part clear? So they don't even know. You won't be awkward walking by. They'll just think it was suggested all the time. Elders are always suggesting, hey, what do you think of so-and-so? How about I matchmake you guys, right? So you've spared yourself that kind of pain and awkwardness for a large part, right? Now, I said that was my advice, male or female, right? So now, my specific advice if this person is a male asking, I fear the rejection, my advice is toughen up. If you're a man, I don't know about women, women are emotional and stuff, so I can't give you good advice on this. For men, you fear rejection, come on. Every man, and jokes aside, I don't want to be too mean, but this is really, every single man needs to face rejection in his life. Whether it's work, or your abilities, or your status, or your, or marriage, or whatever, it's part of being a man. It's part of, you get that slap in the face, and you feel, oh man, my ego was too high. I thought I was hot. I thought it was this. I thought I was strong. I thought I was this. No, it turns out I wasn't. I got a reality check. And it hurts. And then you be like, all right, man, I'll just get back up. Now, a lot of people, they sit and they feel sorry for themselves and, oh, man, be a man. So, I think it's needed. And that's the part of why Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala created us with less emotional, we're not as in tune with our emotions. It's because we have to go to war. We have to sit in a trench and watch our friends die. If you're in tune with your emotions, you're going to break apart, right? There's wisdom in why Allah balanced it in that way. So yeah, just toughen up. Take your rejections, man. It's good. It strengthens you. And the fear of failure will prevent you from achieving anything in life. I guess this is general advice for male and female. The fear of failure will prevent you from achieving anything in life. You gotta be willing to fail, take it head on in order to become great. And take the failure, take the second one, take the third one. In life in general, not just in marriages. If you're getting 3, 4, 5 failures in marriage, we gotta figure something out. All right, so next. What is the bare minimum things that brothers and sisters should know or should have? Okay, should have before thinking about marriage. So what makes them ready, I'm assuming this question means. What makes a young man or a young woman ready for marriage? I'm going to give you guys a general age range. And it's just general. Everybody's circumstance is different. Well, not the range. I'm going to give you the minimum. I think that the minimum, it shouldn't go any lower than this. For women, probably 19 or 20. Like, they shouldn't consider marriage any earlier than that. For men, 22, 23. They shouldn't waste their time thinking about marriage anytime before that because they're still building themselves. And why the man is older? Because they got more, like, the first thing people ask and want to find out is their financial capability, financial obligation. Are you able to sustain a household for my daughter? And he's like, yeah, well, not really. I mean, a couple of years. They'll tell him, okay, a couple of years, come back. And that's it, right? So for women, obviously, the same requirement is not there. So that's just the minimum. And a lot of people are younger and, they're caught up in this dunya and, shaitan puts us all in the fitna, especially in the college age. So I get it. And people want to get married sooner, but just not realistically accessible to 90% of people. So a lot of sabr is needed. It's okay to have somebody in mind. It's okay to start talking halal way and if the parents approve and so on. But realistically, it's very hard to get married before that. If things change or if your circumstance is different or if your parents are supportive and you're mature and so on. And also these ages, typically before that, the person is nowhere near mature enough, right? And they have not experienced life enough. However, like I said, there's exceptions to those rules. So that's just age-wise. Now, what should they have? Their deen. Your deen should be in order. And when I say that, it means at least have your 5 prayers and your bare bones obligations down pat. This is not much to ask. This is not even anything to ask. This is not even a request. Like, you're not getting your 5 prayers ready. You can't even meet your basic discipline to God. The most basic 5 minutes of discipline, and you're saying, like, I want to get married. If you're still talking to girls, you're still talking to guys, you're still this, you're still that. Like, you haven't gotten your basic foundation. You're not even, like, mature enough to do some basic, you're on TikTok 8 hours a day, 10 hours a day, and you're saying, I want to get married. I think I'm mature enough. Like, everybody knows better than that, right? So wisen up with regards to those things. Make yourself available in the eyes of God. Make yourself worthy is the word I'm looking for in the eyes of God, and Allah facilitates things when you are ready for them. Second thing I'll say, very important. You have to be responsible for your own happiness and your own sense of purpose and meaning. Now, this comes at a different time in everybody's life. But until you're able to do that, you're not ready to latch on to somebody else and make them and be their burden. Now they're responsible for making you happy. They're responsible for giving you purpose and meaning. That's on you. That's you. وَكُلُّهُمْ آتِيهِ يَوْمَ الْقِيَامَةِ فَرْدًا. Allah says in the Quran, each and every single one of you will meet your Lord alone. Your journey is your own. When you're able to source your own happiness, I'm not saying you're smiling all day long. I'm saying you know your identity. You know what means something to you. You know how to pursue your passions. You have goals in mind. You have an idea of what life should be like. You know what you mean and what you believe in. To whatever extent, that's a lifelong journey, but you have enough that you're not saying marriage is going to be this magic pill. When I get married, everything is going to get figured out. She's going to wake me up for Fajr, even though my mom tried for 25 years and I made my mom cry every morning, right? Now, all of a sudden, some girl you met yesterday is going to make you, never going to happen, right? You're going to make her cry too, right? Or the both of you are not going to pray Fajr. And then there you go, you're both sinking together. So like, you gotta be able to source your own identity and fulfillment and meaning. Why? Because now you have a partner, great. You're supposed to help each other rise, not drag each other down. Look, I need you to just, like every person's at 100%, inshallah, plus minus. And when this person drops 10%, this person steps in. That person drops 10%, that person steps in. Not we're both at 40%. Like, who's going to fill in the remaining huge gap? We're both need as much help as we can get. That's not how that works, right? So make dua and understand Allah controls all things. Work on yourself, work on your manners. Take a course, an Islamic course on manners. Really read, male and female, read the manners and the modesty and the interaction with conflict of the Prophet ﷺ, how he interacted when problems arose. Everybody should study that and like work on that and discipline that with your family, with your household, before you ever get married. If you are unable to control your temper with your parents, despite the enormous sort of position that they have over you in Islam, how do you think you're going to control your temper with your spouse and your child, right? Now, sometimes someone's stuck in a toxic cycle with their parents because their parents initiated it. That's a different story. But still, if you have not worked on your discipline, then I guarantee you this: you're going to perpetuate toxic cycles that you swore that you would never perpetuate. I guarantee you, in your marriage. And it's going to be the saddest thing in the world, but you're going to be so far gone. It happens. This is the standard. People say, I'll never yell at my wife. I'll never insult her, especially in front of the kids. I'll never this. And then a couple of weeks in, they're throwing this word and that word, and they just got no sense of control whatsoever because they just never worked on it. They just assumed, it's a magic pill. It's going to work out. I'm going to love that person. That's not how it works. You got to work on yourself. You got to struggle. And you got to understand that conflict will happen, and you got to be mature. You got to be able to compromise, to handle things properly, to prioritize, to have principles, and so on. And next, I'll say, again, this question is like, what should we do to prepare for marriage? How should we know we're ready for marriage? Learn about Islam's approach to marriage. Like literally, take an Islamic course on marriage from a reputable source. Beware, and I say reputable source, and sorry, I don't have a list of them now, and I promise you I will compile it. I am in the process of compiling it, because I just don't know the English language ones, but I always insist on it being a reputable source, because you'll get this book. Let's say you go on Amazon, you just find some book, Islam and Marriage. You don't know the author, complete stranger to you. What if it's some liberal, person with a Muslim name who just literally hasn't prayed in their whole life, and they go like, oh, Islam's take on marriage, and they give you some liberal nonsense, complete garbage, and they just put an Islamic touch on it and say, oh, this is how it is, and all they did was present the modern, failed Western approach to marriage and just put an Islamic touch on it and sold the book. So it's a problem. It is a problem that does exist out there. I want you, and I'm not here to say liberal, conservative, this, that, I don't care, right, left, I don't care. All I'm saying is our role model is who? Prophet Muhammad ﷺ and his wives. Prophet Musa ﷺ and his wife in the Quran. Prophet Ibrahim ﷺ and his wife in the Quran. And this is the examples that we have. And we study them, read everything you can find about them. I'm going to model their behavior. When you read that the Prophet ﷺ, Aisha, his wife, said, radiallahu anha, that the Prophet ﷺ never hit a woman or a child or a servant in his whole life. Qat. She said, Qat. He never did it, ever. And he had 9 wives. And he was the head of household. He was not the head of household, he was the head of the empire. He was head of the ummah and the nation. He had so much stress, always dealing with people's problems, dealing with war, and it never led him to even get that angry. How about this? He never, sallallahu alaihi wasallam, insulted his wife, any of his wives once, or his children. Sallallahu alaihi wasallam. With all, you think you're stressed because your Dogecoin went down 10%? The Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam was the head of the empire. He had, and people betraying from inside the ummah, and he never said stupid. Sallallahu alaihi wasallam Muhammad. Never said the word like the equivalent of that to his wives, or to his kids, or to his servants even. Imagine that. Imagine that level of, it wasn't just self-control over anger. It was, he really genuinely was a dignified person inside and out, sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And it was beneath him, way beneath him, to ever speak that way to his wives. It was just that simple. There's no way I'm going to insult this person I've taken as a life partner. And it was not an option. So if you understand those dynamics, and male and female, by the way, this always gets presented as men because men, fly off the handle, they get angry, but it's male and female. Find me a wife out there who has never, not once, called her husband a bad word, never insulted him, belittled him. If that goes in both directions, just that one thing, they never insult or belittle each other ever, no matter what, that's a boundary that they never cross, I guarantee you that household will survive. I guarantee you that marriage will flourish. Over time, they're going to raise wonderful kids. I don't want to say a number because I don't know the data, but maybe because I'm just, as an imam, people come to me only when they have problems. So like for me, it's 100% of people who show up, breach this problem. But if a couple starts insulting each other and cursing each other out, that marriage is doomed. Even if it survives 50 years and they hate each other for 50 years, it's doomed. It's doomed. If this is the contempt you have for a person, or this is how toxic your problem-solving skills are, you can't get past the shouting matches, you can't get past the belittling and the insulting and the putting each other down, then it's a doomed, and there's a lot of resentment, there's a lot of hate, there's no dignity, no respect for one another. If you can promise yourself that and find a spouse who, before you get married, you guys agree to that boundary, we will never insult each other. Not the smallest thing, even the equivalent of the word stupid or whatever it is in your culture, that can't be breached. And we'll never humiliate each other, disrespect each other, backbite each other. We will never, if a problem is ever, God forbid, so bad that we can't resolve it, then, and there's no other solution, then you divorce. Allah says, sarahan jameel, and you separate with dignity and jameel. He said, like, there's honor in the way that they separate. If it's a couple, not everybody's fit for everybody else. If the puzzle pieces don't match, you separate with dignity and honor, right? But that's rare, right? People will just humiliate and disrespect each other and so on and so forth. So that level of emotional maturity is a journey. And you start on that journey before you get married. And you practice it on your household, your mom, your dad, your siblings, because they also deserve good manners from you, and they deserve discipline and patience from you. So it's a win-win. You're learning that skill, you're developing it as an adult. Maybe you didn't get it at home. And Allah will factor that in how He judges you. But that's still not an excuse. If you grew up in a household where parents cursed each other left and right, they're always fighting, flying off the handle, humiliating each other, hitting you, this, that, it's Allah, of course, will factor that in when He judges you. Allah is the most merciful. But that's no excuse. At the end of the day, you're a full-grown adult. You're starting a household now. You are you. Work on it. And if you hated that life so bad, don't restart it. That's your proof that you hate it. But the reality is that most people restart it because they never bother. They assume, I'm not gonna do that. And they just never work on their de-escalation skills, anger management skills, conflict management skills, and then they just literally, first problem arises, they go to their default, which is curse, yell, escalate, right? So work on yourself, and I'm telling you, it's the most rewarding thing. When you reach a point in your life that something that used to make you mad just doesn't anymore, it's a very amazing feeling. It's an amazing feeling. You've literally risen above. You feel like you're watching it from above, like you're on top of a mountain, you're looking at a scene like from a movie, and it's not affecting you. There's nothing, there's no fire here. And you're like, they're insulting you, they're, I don't know, making fun of you, something that used to trigger you, and you're just like, well, that's interesting. This used to make me mad. Like you're thinking about it, and you're saying, okay, now you're so much more clear-headed, and you're able to strategize better and to conflict settle better, inshallah. So yeah, that's my general advice for people to be prepared to get married, inshallah ta'ala. And the modern or Eastern or Western presentations of what it means to be feminine or what it means to be masculine, feminism and masculinity and whatever, all that stuff, if it contradicts with Islam, you throw it straight in the garbage. Straight in the garbage. And this should be very clear. Okay. So I think I didn't really... Okay, let me just... One last thing. So how should a man know that he's ready to get married? He should be financially stable or almost there. Or at least has a very clear-cut plan to be. So if he's a couple of years away, because when he presents himself to the family, the first thing they'll ask is his reputation. Like they'll ask about him. And second thing, his family and so on. And they'll say like, well, so sure, what do you do? How are you going to take care of my daughter? How are you going to afford the apartment? First thing they ask, So if you have no answer for that, and you say, come on, man, they're rejecting me. They must be racist. No, you're just broke, And sometimes it's okay to be broke, but you have such good character, you're such a good catch that they're willing to work with you on that, right? That happens a lot. So for sisters, it's obviously the same metric doesn't apply, the financial stability one, obviously, because it's not your job to be the breadwinner. So, like I said, the age range, at least 19 or older, but you should know where you are in life. I guess a woman would be better suited to advise in this regard, but be ready to be in charge of a household, because you're going to be a wife, you're going to be a mother, you're going to have responsibilities, you're going to have to, as your mom did in her household. So that's what you're going to have to, when you are mentally ready for that and you're anticipating that and you're expecting it, then that, and then of course, for both genders, like we said, you read and listen and learn about the wives of the Prophet ﷺ, the Prophet ﷺ himself, and how they interacted with each other, then that'll give you an idea. And the fiqh of marriage in Islam and so on, you get a better idea of what is expected of you, what is your role as by Allah's command. Before I continue, any questions here from the audience? No? Okay, so we'll continue, inshallah. Someone said, what are your thoughts on premarital counseling, and at what point in the process should it be done, if at all? Yeah, I support it for sure. Premarital counseling, if done by a qualified, competent Muslim counselor who actually has principles of deen, not just some person with a Muslim name who hasn't prayed in years, if they have principles in their deen, which we have. I think we had shared a list, well, we could share it again, of some that we have vetted to some extent. I have not met every single one of these organizations. I've met some of them, and I've seen their curriculum, and I like it. So far, so good, And, like I said, you guys can be our eyes and our ears. If you start taking one of these courses and it just like throws you off, come talk to us so we can remove it from our list, right? Or find out what the issue is. But we have a list of like 4 or 5. Muslim social services should be able to connect you to them. And yeah, they do premarital counseling. What is that? Premarital means before marriage. Counseling, so what they do is very often they'll have you answer questionnaire, both potential spouses, and ask you questions about your upbringing, about what you expect, your anticipations for marriage, and they're very practical, tangible questions. And why do I support this is because it gives you a reality check. In my experience with couples, most people don't really have much of an idea besides what they grew up with. So they need a reality check of what it means to now partner with a completely new person that, from start to finish. So these premarital counseling, if it's done well with Islamic principles, they genuinely give you that reality check, which I really appreciate. And they ask you practical questions that are uncomfortable about like, well, have you guys talked about work? Is the wife going to work? Well, if she is going to work, where's her income going to go? Did you guys agree on that stuff? What if you guys put down payment to a home and stuff? It's very uncomfortable, very questions that you couldn't ask. Are you guys going to get a prenup or a contract before to decide rights and stuff like that? They ask you all those questions, and it's good. It's good to have a third party, neutral third party, ask it and put you on the spot. They'll ask you questions that make you very uncomfortable, they'll do this separately. So some of the sessions they'll do it together. Usually it's 4 or 6 sessions. So they'll do it either together as a couple or separately. And some of them are separate. So they'll ask you when you're doing the separate one, did you witness abuse in your household from your parents? Was it in both directions? Was it dad abusing the mom or mom abusing the dad? Whatever. And so uncomfortable. But it's the first time in your life you're answering these questions where you are like, yeah, and they'll ask you, so what is your plan for anger management? Are you even aware of your anger? Are you, a scale of 1 to 10, are you an angry person? Do you fly off the handle? Do you curse when you get angry? Do you? And you'll say, yeah, I do. Then they'll say, oh, do you plan to do that with your wife? No, I don't. Then they'll tell you, come on. That's what you do. It's what you saw growing up. And you think you're not going to do it with your wife? You're lying to yourself. And they put you on the spot. And male and female, by the way. And you go like, hey, listen, yeah, first time in my life I'm put on the spot. That is true. That's pure 1 + 1 = 2. It is what I do. It is my personality. It's all I saw growing up. And I'm expecting magically I won't do it to my spouse? Come on. You're lying to yourself. And you're heading nose first into disaster. So they put you on the spot. It's really good. It forces you to be uncomfortable, to ask these questions, and then to say, wow, I need to put in work, right? So if it's done well, it'll be good. If it's done terribly, like you go to some liberal, then you come out, you change your gender or something. So the second part of their question was, what point in the process should it be done? I think a good time would be after engagement. So the couple now has committed to each other. They've gone through that first stage of seeing if they are even compatible, like if they want to go forward. And engagement happens after they've agreed to get married. They're still not married yet. So this is a good time. The purpose of engagement in Islam is for the couple to get to know each other a little bit more, to decide once and for all, are we getting married, right? Because some people, most cultures, they treat engagement like marriage, meaning there's no going back after this. You're going to humiliate your family. We already had a party. Everyone's going to, it's going to be embarrassing if you ever go back. That's the exact opposite of what Islam legislated engagement for. Engagement is to get to know each other a little bit more, to open doors a little, because before you're still strangers, but now Allah has allowed you to get to know each other a little bit more with boundaries. You get to know, like, now I'm about to live with this person for the rest of my life. Let me ask him serious questions. You ask about kids, you ask about this or that, right? And you find out, you go do premarital counseling, and then you decide, you find out if you're compatible, if there are any red flags, if you should part ways, right? That's the function of engagement. There should be no shame in breaking off an engagement. And that's why the Prophet ﷺ gave us advice in general. The engagement should not be public. The walima, the wedding, should be public. It cannot be private, because that's like a secret wedding. But the engagement should be private. Don't go and post about it. You should not do that. Private doesn't mean nobody knows. It means you're close, very close circle. Why? Because engagements break off. Cool, 20 people knew. It didn't work out, alhamdulillah. Right? People post their engagement and then they break off. They feel, now you have a pressure because the whole world knows, and you had a whole party and you posted about it. And everyone's saying, Mabruk, congratulations, as if you're already married. Now, God forbid, you realize, oh, no, we're not compatible. You're completely pressured. And sometimes your family tells you, oh, no, you're not breaking this off. Are you crazy? We're all going to be humiliated. This happens in real life. And now you're locked in when you shouldn't have been. Allah spared you that, and you put yourself into that. So follow the sunnah, and you'll get a lot of barakah, and you'll avoid problems in your journey. So I think the process, it should be done after engagement. I think it's a good time to do it. It asks a lot of questions that will assess, it's for that time. Someone said, I would like to suggest hiring somebody as a matchmaker at this masjid. It's a good idea. I think we're really close to doing something like that. Not that we've already planned for it, but I think it's just needed at this point. It comes with its pros and cons, and that's why it's not a common thing in the masjids. But I think we've reached a level where it has to be done. So, Jazakallah khair for the advice. Obviously, like we said, recently we enlisted the help of In Pairs, the app. For those of you who've signed up for it, let me know what your feedback is. We're doing the suhbah thing this summer, inshallah. And yeah, this probably be another step that we'll have to take, inshallah. Can you marry a person that you are in a haram relationship with? It's possible if both people repent to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. They truly feel remorse for the evil that they've done. They really believe that it was evil. It's not just like, oh, let's just get this over with, fix our problems. And then they start actually pursuing a path towards Allah. Like if they're trying to get better in the eyes of God, then maybe this marriage can have blessing in it. And then the condition that in order now to get married, they have to pursue in halal way. So they would have to cut off, their haram interactions. He has to approach the family and go through that stage in order to seek the blessing of God, to right their wrongs and to make tawbah. But I got to give you a warning. When a couple goes through things in the haram way and they get attached, they fall in love and all that stuff, they dug themselves into a hole, because now they put themselves in a position where if it doesn't work out, what if her father rejects completely? They're already in love, they're already attached, they already have a relationship. They're going to be very depressed and how are we ever going to fix this? And you put yourself in that position. So, bad decisions have bad consequences. So if it doesn't work out, you got to be able to take it and be patient for Allah's sake and so on. Another warning I would give a couple that is in a haram relationship is that obviously repent to Allah, disconnect from each other, and then pursue it in a halal way. But let's say if one or both of you are not ready for marriage, either because you're young, maybe they're teenagers or like very early 20s, and the guy, career-wise, he's not even close to being ready to be married, then maybe they just have to pause and disconnect from each other for a couple of years. Just because Allah is most merciful and He forgives sins doesn't mean He gives you a way out immediately. He bails you out right away. If the solution now is be patient and until you can do things in a halal way, and that might take a couple of years, then that's the price you have to pay for doing things the wrong way, right? And getting your heart attached in a way that Allah protected you from. So yeah, if one or two of them are not ready for marriage and they have toxic behaviors and this and that and they're immature, and running a household is a lot more than dating as the Western world does it, where there's no responsibilities and they break off and they do all kinds of haram and they use apps and whatever. Like, there's no responsibility, and that's why society is a mess, right? May Allah protect us from that. So yeah, that's my advice. It can happen, but it requires some work and dua and sincerity and so on. Let's see if there were any questions added from you guys now. Okay, this is a new one. How do you navigate fear of marriage? Because you've seen so many examples of unhappy and miserable examples all around you. Especially when Islam promotes marriage, so we should prioritize it. Like I told you, we're living in the end of times. We're living in the lizard hole era. We're living in a time where the haram is accessible and no commitment, and it's just easy. If it doesn't work out, you can just leave it behind. And marriage is a commitment, and people are miserable and so on. Do your best to be a person worthy of not being miserable. Be a person whose character is very beautiful, who's slow to anger, who's quick to forgive, a person who, when something is, you're able to compromise, you compromise. Be a person who's very low maintenance, if that's the phrase I want to use. Like you don't need a lot, but you're very kind, you're good to be around. Be that person and seek a person like that. I know it's easier said than done to find a person like that, but you got to. Here's what I'll say too, is that we've made marriage so hard that people feel like it's just one shot and that's it, right? The Sahaba didn't have that mindset. We have to bring back that culture. It's easier said than done, but that's part of my job and part of your job as the next generation. Sahaba had very simple marriages. It cost almost nothing. They would slaughter a sheep or two, gather the people, the families say, Mabruk, congratulations, and if he has a home, they just move into it, right? And that's it. That's it. Therefore, when it's so simple to get married, the mahr was very reasonable. When it was so simple to get married, the pressure was not that high. You didn't have to have ice sculpture of dolphins, with the blowhole, blowing some water on it and the smoke machine. You didn't have to have the $100,000 Hilton wedding where it's like this, the stakes are high. It's one and done. If this doesn't work out, I'm doomed for life. That stress, that pressure makes it feel like I have to find the perfect person. And then you just waste your life away in the stress and so on. When the stakes are lower, when marriage is a lot easier, believe it or not, and I'm not saying we should encourage divorce, I'm saying at the time of the Sahaba, the companions of the Prophet ﷺ, divorce was simpler too. If two people got married very simply like that, if after 6 months or a year or two, they just said, you know what, we're not too compatible, we're not like, just these two people are not working out, they would, sarahan jamilan, Allah says in the Quran, separate in a dignified and noble way. And then guess what? A couple of months later, they would each have married somebody else. And that's several examples from the companions. So they didn't take marriage so seriously, they didn't take divorce so seriously either. It was just a part of life. And because the stakes were lower and it was a much smoother process, and it wasn't this hard, the pressure towards it was much lower, and people had easier time making it work. So what can I say? I can only advise this person, make dua, be a person worthy of being around, and pray that Allah grants you such a person, and take it easy on yourself. Reduce your expectations while prioritizing the principles, the non-negotiables. This person has to be on deen, they have to be a good character, as the Prophet ﷺ specifically specified those two things. But those are the two things that make a marriage. Everything else is fleeting, and it doesn't make a marriage. Wealth doesn't make a marriage. How many rich people get divorced? Probably more rich people get divorced than not so rich people. How many times did people insist on it being the same tribe or the same culture or whatever, and they still got divorced, and they were fighting and yelling and cursing each other's families? Oh, it must be the same family. Then they're cursing each other's families. Now what? Right? It's like, if you don't prioritize a person with good deen and good character in both directions, then you're gonna deal with it. You can deal with it. But character trumps everything. The Prophet ﷺ advised to marry a person who fears Allah and who has good character, because if it works out, they're going to be the best person to be around. And if it doesn't work out, they will be the best person to part ways with, because they are full of dignity, right? So it's just a win-win when you deal with character and deen. We hear a lot about how the Prophet ﷺ was with his wives. Can you explain the qualities of his wives so both parties can take inspiration? So well, let's talk about roles. When it comes to the dunya roles in a marriage, the man's job is to handle the external affairs. This is just strictly roles. We're not talking about character. What's your job in a marriage? What's your duty? What are you going to be held accountable for in the eyes of God? The man's job is to handle the external affairs. The woman's job is to handle the internal affairs. So the man is the breadwinner, he's the protector. If there's war, he puts his blood on the line, like we're seeing in Gaza and in Sudan and these places. So this happens. You might laugh and say, oh, come on, that's what a man's designed for. You step up to the plate and you protect your family. And you provide, by Allah's permission, shelter and food and drink. And God forbid you lose your job, it's your job to wake up the next morning, go out there, put yourself out there, put your pride aside and find whatever it is that's going to pay the bills for your family, so your family doesn't, God forbid, lose the home and lose their food and their shelter. And the woman's job is to take care of the household, the internals, right? And that's the things that are taboo now for whatever reason, the cooking, the cleaning, taking care of the kids and whatnot. It's a trade-off, right? Everyone got a task. Now, obviously, there's some overlap. Sometimes in your circumstances, someone takes this duty and someone takes that duty, temporarily or permanently. Sometimes, everyone's circumstances are different, but that's a general overview of the roles. So now the qualities. We keep hearing about the qualities of the Prophet ﷺ. He never yelled, he never insulted. That goes both ways. They never yelled at each other, never insulted. I'm telling you, if you find a partner that you agree to this note, we will never yell at each other, we will never insult each other, I promise you that marriage is going to work out. And if it happens not to work out because your personalities are completely 180 degrees, then your divorce, or God forbid, separation or whatnot, will be the most dignified. It'll be better than thousands of marriages, let me tell you that much, right? The first domino in a marriage falling apart or being a miserable, even if it doesn't fall apart, it's miserable for the next 50 years, is they curse each other, they insult each other, they resent each other, they yell at each other, they humiliate each other. You don't respect this person now. This is how you treat them. I don't care if you grew up with that. It's your job to fix that before you get into the next stage. So all those personality traits that we talk about the Prophet ﷺ when we advise men, same advice goes to sisters. If you treat your husband that way, you never backbite him in front of other people, you never speak ill about him in front of your parents and those kind of things, then you will go very, very far. So yeah, that's the brothers, whoever's, I assume it's a brother asking this, to say, what personality traits should the woman have? Same ones as the husband, right? As the man, as the Prophet ﷺ. And of course, I would go further and say for the sisters, go study the life of the life of Fatima radiallahu anha, the life of the wives of the Prophet ﷺ, how they carried themselves, their interactions. And for the men, study the Prophet ﷺ, study Abu Bakr and Umar and Uthman and Ali, and study the Prophet Musa alayhi salam with his wife, and study the loyalty they showed each other. I'll tell you one thing, the Prophet ﷺ specifically praised, and I'm paraphrasing here, is the gratitude of a woman towards her husband when he's going out there and toiling and struggling and dealing with a boss and dealing with the stresses and the burdens of life. When he comes home, he sees a beautiful character. He sees that she took care of the household. She's supportive of his journey. She knows, she acknowledges, while not knowing what stresses he went out there, she acknowledges that that she just doesn't understand, she's not part of it, right? So that gratitude, when he comes home to a peaceful house full of sakina and mawadda and rahmah, as Allah says in the Quran, which is tranquility and love and mercy, that is what makes or breaks a household, right? So that would be the job of the woman, to be grateful for the rizq. That's her character. There's very famous stories from the past where one scholar who was wealthy, he had a student who was just the best character he ever saw. So he married his daughter to him. And this student was very poor. So she went to a different lifestyle now. She grew up rich, even though she's the daughter of a very righteous man and a righteous household. It's very difficult to go from living rich to living very poor, like really dirt poor. But her father said, "Hey, listen, this is the best human being I know, my best student. Are you okay with this?" And she said, "Yeah." I mean, if she was a righteous person as well. She signed on for it. Said, "Yeah, if this person is I'll take the trade. I'll take the trade, basically. I won't have the same lifestyle, but if I get a great person, then I'll take that trade." So it was mentioned about her, like every time she would mention her husband, she would just always, and their life together, she would always embellish, even though she knew it just wasn't real. Like she would embellish like their lifestyle, even though they were poor, and it was the hardest thing on her. For him, he's always been poor, so he's used to that lifestyle. For her, it was the hardest thing in the world. But she was a righteous woman, and she was grateful, and she knew the trade that she made, and so on. That doesn't mean she was, theoretically, if she realized, well, this life is too hard for me, and we have to separate at some point, then that would have been understandable from her. But she was just she accepted this deal. She prioritized the good character, that even when she didn't even allow herself to complain about it. So when she would present the stories and say like, "Oh, we enjoyed this kind of meal," like she would obviously embellish it without lying, to present like a much more wealthy lifestyle than they had. And her husband later found out that this is how she speaks of him in his absence, and when she's going back to talk to her family, because they're rich and they know this higher standard, that he was just so touched and so moved. Like that's the kind of loyalty, that's the kind of partnership that he got. That's the kind of high quality person that he married. So that's another thing that a kind of character that a husband and a wife should have for each other. Someone says, "Is it allowed for me to get one of my friends to ask if a guy is interested in marriage?" Is it allowed for me to get one of my friends to ask if a guy is interested in marriage? So one of your friends, I'm assuming you mean just one of your friends, like a female who is in the same boat as you. I don't recommend it. Unless you want fitna, you want betrayal. As a rule of thumb, male and female, you don't ask a fellow miskeen in your position to go and ask somebody, for marriage. So this woman will send her friend, her also single friend, to ask the single guy if he's interested in her, in the first woman. Next thing she knows, she's being invited to their wedding, right, as a maid of honor. So she's like, she dug herself into that hole. That's her problem, honestly. This is a terrible, terrible idea. You got to ask an elder. You got to ask an elder, somebody who's already married, somebody who's wiser, somebody who has status in the community. So then why status or like reputation in the community? Because there's something to lose here. This person they have some dignity, and there's nothing in it for them. There's no conflict of interest, and they're going to look out for your interests, inshallah, to the best. Your best knowledge about this person is that they're a dignified elder in the community who will look out for your interests, inshallah. So yeah, ask a middle person, but definitely not a fellow miskeen. As a college girl interested in a guy, how can I bring up marriage? Should I wait or should I approach like Khadija radiallahu anha? Okay, so you're in college, and you're interested in somebody, and you want to know if you should wait or approach a Khadija. So if you're in college, like I said, if I gave you guys the general ages before. If you're like still in your teens, 18, 19, it might be too soon. It probably is. But some people are okay waiting, like they're interested in each other, the families know, and they'll wait a couple of years. So they're like committed, they have a promise to one another, like almost like an engagement. Sometimes it is a full-blown engagement. That's fine too. So she's asking, should I wait or approach the Khadija? If you will approach, I'm not saying you should, but if you will approach, you're saying like Khadija, then it should be like Khadija radiallahu anha. She did not approach the Prophet ﷺ directly. She used a middle person, and then he was going to ask for her hand, he approached her family, okay, with his uncles, because his father had passed away, sallallahu alaihi wasallam. So it was done properly, right? She let her servant go speak to the Prophet ﷺ. They already knew each other from business, to let him know that she's available. And that was the modest way of saying, like, she's interested in you. But they don't go out and say straight up, she's interested. It's like, hey, so-and-so is available. Like, hey, what are your thoughts? So obviously, the Prophet ﷺ got the hint. She's obviously interested. And so he presented it that way as well. Same with the wife of Musa alayhi salam. She told her father, Inna khayra man istajarta al-qawiyyu al-amin. Like, this person would be great to hire. He's strong and he's capable. He's capable and he's very trustworthy. Her father took the hint. She likes this man. She only knew him for an hour. And she's already, praising him. He's strong, he's capable, he's trustworthy. So he took the hint, and the father's job is to take that hint. He's not supposed to be so offended. I can't believe my human daughter likes a male. How's that possible? And like, come on, come on. People have gone full stupid, and then they leave their daughters to rot. And it's a huge sin, a huge sin. They are The Prophet ﷺ said, "إِن لَمْ تَفْعَلُوا تَكُنْ فِتْنَةٌ فِي الْأَرْضِ وَفَسَادٌ كَبِيرٌ." If you do not marry your daughters to righteous men who come and request for their hand, then there will be a huge fitna in the land and a huge corruption in the land. This is the promise and the threat of the Prophet ﷺ. That's exactly what we see in the world today. There's more zina than righteous marriage, right? And that's the responsibility of those who deny their daughters the options and opportunity. Now I get it, cultures are different, so if a daughter, there's a lot of women here who would rather die than let their father know they're interested in somebody, which is fair. So then speak to a middle person, speak to an older sister and so on, and get the ball rolling that way, inshallah. But yeah, so I don't know this person in college. Definitely don't approach it in person, but speak to a middle person who is older and wiser and so on. Now you might say, well, I'm in college. Who's going to be that middle person? Well, you're in a community, right? You're part of, you're somewhere in New York, I presume. Go speak to, your community elder. Obviously for sisters, it'll be a female. And get the ball rolling. Somebody will know somebody who can get you started, inshallah. Even if it's the local mentor messaging this person on social media and saying, hey, I have a sister in the community that I think you might be compatible with. Here's her social media. What do you think? Would you like to move next step, right? So, yeah, look, I think people should, like I said, the conservatives seem to be more conservative than the time of the Prophet ﷺ, and the liberals are more liberal than the time of the Prophet ﷺ. So, we shoot ourselves in the foot with these things. Because again, you'll read hadiths or narrations where the Sahaba knew the women by name and by face, and they spoke, and there was, and it was like, wait, I thought we don't do that kind of stuff. Yeah, we're taking it too far a little bit, right? And this creates problems. Every time you remove the balance that Allah placed, you run into problems. True or false? Right? When we go too liberal, we already know that it's unlimited problems. When you go too conservative, you have unlimited problems as well. Two sides of the same coin. You're not more conservative than the Prophet ﷺ. You're not, astaghfirullah, more modest than the Prophet ﷺ. Let me make it very clear, right? Or his Sahaba. So let's meet down the middle. If you're interested, subhanAllah, in the Quran, Allah mentions the guidelines of letting a woman know. So if a woman had gotten divorced, or rather her husband had passed away, in Arabian culture, somebody else wants to marry her, he could let her know right away. It could be a couple of weeks after her husband passed away, and he could let her know, hey, listen, after your iddah, after the 4 months and 10 days, I'll marry you. So Allah said, well, that's just undignified. He should wait until don't even present it to her until the 4 months and 10 days are up. However, Allah says, you can, in either direction, the person can make their interest known without actually straight up saying it. Meaning, similar to what Prophet Musa alayhi salam's wife did. She told her dad that this person is strong and capable, and she can do that in certain circumstances. They can do that directly to that person. Let their interest be known in an indirect way, but when I say directly to that person, meaning that person heard them, praised them, or so on, or got interacted with them in some way. I know it's It's tough to decide where the line is drawn. That's why simplest thing is I say, if you're interested in somebody, even from far away, for the guys, come see me, and I'll try my best to help. And for the sisters, definitely see, you guys know my wife, go reach out to her, and you go speak to females in the community who are married, who can try and get the ball rolling for you. I think there should be no shame in this. This is exactly what humans were created to do. And like I said, we're not going to be more modest than the Prophet ﷺ, right? When Umar radiallahu anhu, when his daughter Hafsa, she was very young, maybe 19 or 20, when her husband passed away, he went straight, after the iddah has passed, he went straight to Uthman and said, hey, I'd like to offer you my daughter's hand in marriage. He didn't want to leave her unmarried for long, right? And then of course he went to Abu Bakr, and then he went, and they said no, but they only said no because they had heard the Prophet ﷺ mention that he would like to marry her. So ultimately she married, the Prophet ﷺ married her, and it was the best gift of her life. So my point being is look, Umar wasn't ashamed and saying, come on, no, I'll just wait till somebody asks for a hand. What am I? I'm Umar. I'm going to go beg people to marry my daughter. No, he's like, I found a good person for my daughter, and I'm going to go for it. All right, let me do, because I want to respect your time, guys. I want to do, let's say, 3 more. And then, again, as always, I'll be here after if people have more questions, but I'll wrap it up for your sake, inshallah. Next question. Someone said, not to generalize, but it seems that most men lack emotional intelligence to handle marriage. To handle marriage and a wife. They lack the emotional intelligence to handle marriage and a wife. And women are highly emotional beings. How do you fix this? Yes, women are highly emotional beings, but men are not. So you are marrying a man, not a woman. So the same way that he has to meet you halfway, you have to meet him halfway. So the woman is highly emotional. Men are from Mars and women are from Venus, whatever that book. Yeah, Allah created us differently, but Allah is the most wise. Allah created it to have a harmony, like 2 puzzle pieces. They're not the exact. If you have 2 exact puzzle pieces, they're not going to fit. They have to be different in order for them to fit and have harmony. Allah is the most wise. He understood, He knows that this is the harmony that will work. And that has worked throughout human history. So yes, women are highly emotional, men are highly not emotional for the most part. So both of them have to learn about the other and meet halfway. The man is not, it's not as, beware of Western, programming. The man it's not the man's job to go and become extremely highly emotional, become a woman basically. And it's not the woman's job to completely throw away her emotions, right? It's the middle, me in the middle. So both are compromising. Both are understanding that, yes, I'm not going to expect 100% fluency in the way that I think and the way that I understand. We're going to have harmony down the middle. And just so we're clear, you got to really zoom out and look at all of human history. Our ancestors. Our ancestors were warriors. And we talk about, I say this, you might think, oh, this guy's talking about the glory days 1,000 years ago. Look at our brothers and sisters in Palestine and in Sudan and Yemen and so on, and living in Palestine. All of a sudden, you don't have a home. All of a sudden, everything you know is gone. And the man, now it's time to be a man, right? And it's time to lead the household, and all the things that made him relatively emotionless, the part of his khilqah, the part of his biology that made that, suddenly his wife and his daughter and the women folk in his house are very grateful to have a man like that. Because he's going to step up, he's going to have the characteristics to step up to the plate and be a man at those times and take the bullets and go and walk 20 miles to get the water and whatever. The man, the emotionless man, and see his friend, see 10 people die or be shot, shuhada, and he's not emotional enough to, break down there. He's going to keep moving on. That's what we were created for, right? And Allah created that perfect harmony. When the times get tough, suddenly it's very clear why Allah created men different than women. It's just that we live in very soft times, at least us, because we're so comfortable, that we don't even realize now, but why are men this way and why are women different that way? God forbid. May Allah protect us from hard times, but when the times are tough, it starts to become a lot more clear why that distinction is there and what value it brings. So both genders should understand each other and beware. Beware of being duped. Beware of being duped by the media, by modern. I'll say this. Beware of being duped sometimes. I don't know. Sometimes it's accidental. Sometimes it's intentional by Islamic speakers who get popular online. Again, sometimes it's a good speaker who we respect, who the way they presented it, was imbalanced. May Allah forgive them, and there was no intention there. But the way they present marriage is, the man must do this, and the man must do that, and you come home after a long day's work, and you help your wife with the chores around the house, and you come back from a long day's work, and you raise the kids, you take care of the kids, you take them off your wife's hand, and you got to be fully emotional with your wife, and your wife has to be a shoulder to cry on, cry in front of your wife and be emotional. Are you nuts? Are you nuts? This guy, that's how you guarantee that the marriage falls apart. That's two women married. That's not a man and a wife. Are you kidding me? Where's the man? Like, first of all, where's the duties of the woman? If the man goes and works 10 hours, breaking his back in a construction site, and then he comes home and, I don't want to like share problems, but these things happen all the time where the woman, the sister watched these Islamic speakers and they said, oh, the Prophet ﷺ used to help around the house. And he sure did. Absolutely he did. But they forget that he was also a warrior and a leader of the ummah, and he dealt with the people's problems, and he was out. And the Prophet ﷺ had 22 expeditions, 22 battles from age basically 45 to 63, sallallahu alaihi wasallam, less than 20 years. So every year, at least once, more often than not twice, he would be gone for months at a time. That's the Prophet ﷺ. Like, that's how men do. That's all of us. You don't even have to go back one generation, maybe two max, to have in your story that the man was gone for months at a time. Everybody here has a story. Your dad or your grandfather. That's as far back as you have to go. This is how life works. Men were out there toiling and struggling and sitting in trenches in World War I and World War II. In Gaza right now, sitting in trenches, and they have a dead shaheed right next to them, and they have to stay here. They show their head, they get killed, and then that's the blood of the man. We use those instincts on Call of Duty and those stupid games because men have become stupid. And men have become fat, and men have become pampered. So yeah, one day those instincts might be used for real life, inshallah, and may Allah protect us. But that's when you're called upon. That's when you're tested if you're a real man. My point being is that, guys, be very careful. Wallahi, these are all lies and psyops and dupes and attempts to ruin the household. A man is a man and a woman is a woman. You'll never get the man to be as emotional as you are, or as mostly in tune or available. And that's how it's designed. That's by design. A man is not as emotionally available. You all got to meet halfway, right? Everybody meets the other halfway, but don't expect a woman and don't expect a man, right? So each person has to put in effort to meet the other one halfway, and that's how a harmony is formed. That's how the puzzle pieces fit into each other, inshallah. So just zoom out and understand and realize we've been lied to online. So just so we're clear, yeah. So there's emotional intelligence is needed on both sides, and a harmony can be reached. But beware of being duped, of expecting more than is real. And why? Why should you beware of expecting more than is real? Because you won't get it. You simply won't get it. And then your marriage is going to fall apart. You're going to feel ungrateful. You're going to feel like, come on, other people have it better. I see the Instagram posts. Man, those people you saw one, forged or faked or posed photograph in between all the terrible days that they have, right? It's Instagram and social media, and it's all fake. It's all fake. There's nothing more loving than a household of two people who fear Allah, who have good character, who are good to be around, who are slow to anger, quick to forgive, who love develops because of their kind and good character to one another, because of how much they believe in this partnership, how much they have control over their temper, how much they are self-aware of toxic cycles that they grew up with, that they promised never to perpetuate, and they decide, I got to put in work to avoid perpetuating that. That is the best household you'll ever see, right? Yes. I could not have said it better. I'm sure the guys couldn't hear you, so I'll try to replay what you said. Our sister saying that in the past, people were community-driven, and families were near each other, and even if it wasn't direct family, it was qabila, tribe, bayt, aila, and that's exactly, we go back full circle to the conversation about cousins previously. It takes a village to raise a child, and I fully agree with what you said. A woman, her husband would be gone for 3 months at a time at war or whatever it was at the time of the Prophet ﷺ, or even one generation ago. Our parents, our dads, There's no way she's just sitting at home with her kids alone for 3 months. It doesn't make any sense. It's just not how it functions. Where was she? She had her sister with her kids. She had her mother. She had her cousins. She had her friends and family, other females, where takes a village to raise a child. So I hope and I pray that we all put effort and put work in to reprogram this isolationism that they've built into the modern Western world. It's like the nuclear family only. By the way, this is proven that this was intentional. Like there's people on record saying we need to break the nuclear family. Some woman, it's been making rounds, this video where she wrote a few books and she's a sociologist and whatnot. Like these people were intentionally saying we got to disconnect people from their cultures and from their extended families in order to control them. That's the bottom line. It's not conspiracy. They've literally said this out loud on video, influential people and so on. My point being is that I agree exactly what you said. The more support you have community-wise, the more harmony you'll have in your home, because the pressure is much less. It's very hard to raise a child, very hard to raise 2 children. But I pray that a masjid like this, I pray that, I'll say one thing, may Allah bless them. The elders in this community, I remember vaguely, I was a young child, but I remember when we were all Brooklyn people, right? Brooklyn transplants. So at some point, they decided to start moving to Staten Island, and they did it on purpose. May Allah reward them. Like, I remember this. I remember the conversations I'd hear. Farhan, I think you were around back then. We would hear these, and they'd be like, yeah, we're buying houses near each other. Some of you guys are the children of these people, and you don't give your parents enough credit. Like, it's absolutely, they planned for this 20 years ago, where they were like, we'll buy homes near each other with the vision that this masjid wasn't here. And when they bought it, it was just a house, right? A Hindu temple that was was built into, it was just a house that was a Hindu temple. And so they said, that's our vision. That's our vision 20 years from now, is that our kids grow up together. And guess what? Every single year they would vacation together. And sometimes it's not convenient for me to vacation in July. I'd rather do August because my work. But hey, the other 10 families are doing July, I'll do July. You might think it's a small thing. It's a huge thing. And they would take their kids to Sunday school together, karate together. They go to the park together, camping together. It was a lot, because by the way, usually you do this with family. You have your cousins and your second cousins, but they all were here in America with no extended family, right? So you built your family. So this is a story that needs to be told, Brother Sharif. I think that we don't appreciate enough, because over here, everyone in this generation is like, I can't wait to leave New York. Everything's here is $1 million, right? So, but the idea being is that they had this forward vision 20 years before their kids were born, and as their kids grew up, and every stage of their kids, because it takes a village to raise a child. I pray that Allah uses us to have this masjid be that. Obviously, a woman, is raising her kids in her own household, but I pray that she also sees the second household where her kids are the same age as, 5 other parents' kids. She trusts those moms and the dads trust those dads, and they bring their kids together, and that's how it is. That's a village. That takes the pressure, the immense pressure off of one mom and dad raising a child. They don't even have grandparents because the grandparents are very far away. They don't even have the sister or the brother because they moved to different states. You don't have a village at all. So the pressure is on, and you don't feel emotionally fulfilled by your husband because he's not gonna be able to be like what your sister will do, play that role. So everything falls apart when we broke apart community and tribes, not tribalism, tribes. And so your point is very valid. So what do we do now? We can complain about it. Our job is to make attempts. Make sacrifices, spend money properly. I pray that this building, these beams that we all invested in, everyone here, I'm sure you've donated. You have a share in this beam and that beam. You have a share in that light. You have a share in this building, what it's going to be. You have a share in the mommy and me room that we use upstairs. That's your investment. Inshallah, to serve your kids here. But if Allah wills that you move away one day and your kids are being raised elsewhere, Allah will not forget. Allah is ash-shakur, the most appreciative. He will give you a place for your kids to be raised like this too. Think this way. That's how our elders, and I don't mean 1,000,000 years ago, I mean 20 years ago, in this particular specific location. That's exactly their plan, and this is us living the fruition of their plans by Allah's blessing and permission. A lot of sacrifices were made. You think when they came and decided to move here, some of them said, man, I'd rather move to Jersey, it's cheaper. I could get a better job there. Or I'd rather go deeper into Staten Island, there'll be better, cheaper homes, bigger homes. Yeah, but they're all moving here, and this is where the masjid was bought, so bismillah. I'll take the cheaper home. I'll take the smaller home. I'll take this, or the more expensive but smaller home. Sacrifices were made left, right, and center for years. This is what we talked about yesterday. The ambitious person, the person with foresight, he can see 20 years in the future. He and she is making sacrifices left, right, and center. And they're not going to like everybody in that group. You're not going to be perfectly, buddies with everybody in that group. But if they are dignified people, by the way, just so we're clear, not all the Sahaba loved each other to bits, but they would die for each other, because they were principled people with good character and akhlaq. You don't have to love everybody with good akhlaq. You might not be your cup of tea, but you respect them. They're dignified. They carry themselves well. They are my people. That's my tribe. That's my people, right? This is how we should be thinking. You guys are in your 20s, inshallah, a couple of years, you'll all have kids. You'll have your first, your second, your third. Some of you already have kids. Think this way. In 20 years, the kids of these people are going to be the prospects for your children, for the next generation. So raise them and raise your kids and raise their kids too. And guess what? It relieves your burden. 3 moms taking care of 3 kids is a million times easier than 1 mom taking care of 1 kid. I think some moms can attest to this, if there's moms here. Right? 3 moms taking care of 3 kids is a million times easier than 1 mom taking care of 1 kid. And that's life, subhanAllah. So I cannot agree more. Community is everything. We got a plan. We got to put that in your plans. Don't just put money in your plans, right? Okay. Please. Yes, Jazakumullah khairan. SubhanAllah, social isolation is pure poison. And I agree with what you said. I hope that this center is a place for that. Because we envision it as much more than just a masjid. We pray our salawat, but we have activities throughout the day and the night, and a place to raise your kids. And women to come together during the day, their husbands are out at work, and they're playing their role in raising the next generation of kids with the relief that comes with companionship and being able to disperse the responsibility amongst people who you love and you care for, who have your values, right? Okay, we said 3 more, there's 1 more left, right? So let me try to get a good one, inshallah. Yeah, go for it. Brother is asking, what do I think about long distance relationships? Some brothers who their wives are overseas, but the man is here. Why? Why do they have that set up? So this brother was born and raised here, and he was advised marry from back home. As that happens. So that is a culture that is not as every generation it gets less and less. It used to be very common, but because more and more people are being born here and second generation is being born here, it's obviously becoming very clear that the cultural divide is big enough that not as many people are being forced or recommended to go get married overseas. Now the usual setup is that a person gets married overseas and starts the paperwork of bringing their wife here. Is that what they're doing? Okay, so you can't speed up the paperwork. You just have to be patient. So I assumed you were saying, because I want to double check, if they're just waiting for the paperwork to Allah make it easy so they can be reunited, then Bismillah, they got to be patient. And they signed on for that. They knew the timelines and they're saying patient. That's fine, inshallah. But if somebody has a long distance relationship or marriage permanently, like their wife and kids are somewhere in a different country and they're here and they don't plan to change that, that's a problem. That's not how marriage and life is supposed to be. The dad is gone forever for life. That does happen. Now, sometimes that happens because it's out of their hands, because of poverty, because of life and paperwork, and may Allah make it easy for such people. But usually you're not forced to usually here, especially this generation. Allahu Akbar. Yes, brother.
What do you think about that same question, but pre-marriage? Like you meet someone online through different states. Should you pursue that?
Different state. So different state is much more reasonable. Like you're not expecting to be long distance. You met long distance, and then at marriage, one of you guys is moving.
Exactly. But you don't know anything about the reputation.
Yeah.
You don't know anything. You're also pretty far, so you can't meet them often. Is that worth it to pursue?
It's an option. And when you use these marriage apps, the halal ones, or even obviously don't use the haram ones, but the halal ones, they'll usually expand your circle that way. Usually a person will do that when they've exhausted their opportunities or their options in their part of the world or their state or their city, And usually there are much more wonderful people in their city, but they just can't reach them because their family doesn't have the connections, etc., etc., etc. So, I don't fault anybody for going out of state. Bismillah. Obviously, it comes with pros and cons, just like this one does. Because now, not only yes, I can't vet them as well, because it's your right, it's your obligation, and your right to vet the person you might want to marry, right? You should be doing that. So it's gonna be harder when they're out of state. So you say Bismillah, but if they seem to be a good person as best you can, very often you can try to find a connection who knows somebody from that state and ask about them. It's not the easiest in the world, but I wouldn't close doors. You might find a great person. Now, the problems after marriage might be that, well, their family is out of state, and how often do you, let's say they moved to you or you moved to them, because maybe you're not interested in moving and leaving your life behind then. So it comes as a package with its own pros and cons, just like marrying locally has pros. But I wouldn't close the door on it. Wallahu a'lam. All right, questions? We good? Yes. Oh, we're good, Brother Sharif? All right, there's a bunch here left. But like I said, I'll end it here, and I'll stick here for a couple more minutes. If anybody wants me to hit the ones that are here or to answer your own questions, you can come see me, inshallah. Jazakumullah khairan, guys. May Allah Ta'ala bless you with righteous spouses. May Allah bless you with righteous children. May Allah allow you to be the cornerstones of the future community. And may Allah allow us to implement everything we learned and allow us to serve you in terms of finding you a righteous spouse. Subhanakallahumma wa bihamdik nashhadu